Let's start. Imagine you are sitting at your desk on a random Tuesday afternoon. The phone rings, you pick it up, it's your boss, the CEO of the company. He sounds perfectly normal. His tone is rushed, a little stressed, exactly how he always sounds when he's in the middle of closing a big deal. He tells you he needs a massive favor. He's finalizing a secret corporate acquisition, and he needs you to wire $35 million to a new offshore escrow account immediately. He stresses that it has to be done quietly. No paperwork yet. Just get the money moved so the deal doesn't fall through. You recognize his voice. You recognize his cadence. You even hear his slight signature cough. So, you authorize the transfer. You hit send. The money is gone. 30 minutes later, the real CEO walks into the office, holding a coffee, completely unaware of what just happened. You didn't just wire $35 million to a secret corporate account. You wired it to a criminal syndicate on the other side of the planet. It wasn't your boss on the phone, it was an AI, a perfectly synthesized, completely indistinguishable digital clone of his voice. Welcome to 2026, the year the global economy realized that the ultimate security vulnerability wasn't a computer virus or a hacked password. It was human trust. To understand how dangerous this is, we have to understand what money actually is. Money isn't just math. It isn't just paper or gold or lines of code on a bank server. At its absolute core, money is a physical manifestation of trust. We trust that a dollar is worth a dollar. We trust that the bank is actually holding our money. We trust the person on the other side of the transaction. When you remove trust from a financial system, the entire thing completely collapses in a matter of seconds. And throughout history, the greatest financial heists have never been about breaking into vaults with explosives or cracking complicated safes. The greatest heists have always been about hacking human psychology. To see exactly how this works, we have to rewind exactly 100 years. Back to 1925. Paris in 1925 was booming. It was the roaring 20s. But there was one massive rusting problem in the center of the city, the Eiffel Tower. Today we think of the Eiffel Tower as a permanent, priceless monument. But back then it was actually deeply unpopular. It was only built to be a temporary exhibit for the 1889 World's Fair. It was supposed to be torn down after 20 years. By 1925, it was falling apart, rusting aggressively, and costing the city of Paris an absolute fortune just to keep it painted and structurally sound. Newspapers started running articles complaining about the cost. They argued that maybe it was time to finally tear the giant ugly metal monstrosity down, and a man named Victor Lustig read one of those articles. Victor Lustig was not a violent criminal. He was a master of psychology. He realized that the city of Paris had created a perfect narrative of doubt. People already believed the tower was a financial burden. So, Lustig decided to pull off the most audacious scam in human history. He was going to sell the Eiffel Tower. Lustig didn't just walk up to a random person on the street and offer them the tower. He understood that to bypass human skepticism, you have to build an ironclad architecture of authority. First, he went to a master forger and had them create incredibly realistic, highly detailed fake government stationery. The letterhead was flawless. The seals looked perfectly official. He then sent letters to the top 6 scrap metal dealers in Paris, inviting them to a highly confidential, top-secret meeting at the Hôtel de Crillon, one of the most expensive and prestigious hotels in the city. When the dealers arrived, Lustig introduced himself as the Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He spoke eloquently. He wore tailored suits. He acted exactly how a high-level government official was supposed to act. He told the businessmen that the city could no longer afford to maintain the tower. The government had secretly decided to tear it down and sell the 7,300 tons of iron for scrap. But because the tower was a famous landmark, they had to keep the deal entirely secret to avoid public outrage until it was finalized. Lustig wasn't selling metal. He was selling a psychological environment. The fake stationery, the expensive hotel, the demand for secrecy. It all perfectly bypassed the logical defenses of the businessmen. One dealer in particular, a man named André Poisson, took the bait. Poisson was a new businessman, eager to make a name for himself in the Parisian elite. He wanted this deal badly, but his wife was suspicious. She wondered why everything was so secretive. Lustig noticed Poisson's hesitation, and this is where his genius for hacking human trust peaked. Lustig arranged a private meeting with Poisson and confessed that he was struggling to pay his bills on a meager government salary. He heavily implied that he needed a bribe to guarantee Poisson would win the contract. In Poisson's mind, a flawless government official was suspicious, but a corrupt government official demanding a bribe? That made perfect sense. That was exactly how business was done. The demand for the bribe actually convinced Poisson that the deal was real. Poisson handed over a massive sum of cash for the tower, plus a hefty bribe. Lustig took the money, boarded a train to Vienna and completely vanished. Poisson was so utterly humiliated and embarrassed by how easily he had been manipulated that he refused to ever go to the police. Victor Lustig successfully sold the Eiffel Tower because he understood that human beings don't verify facts. We verify signals of authority. If it looks official, sounds official, and feels official, our brains shut down our critical thinking. Fast forward back to 2026. The architecture of trust has fundamentally changed. We don't rely on expensive hotel meetings or physical government stationery anymore. Modern global biz moves at the speed of light. Trillions of dollars cross international borders every single day, facilitated entirely by digital communication, emails, text messages, and phone calls. This brings us to the business email compromise, or BEC. For years, BEC was the most lucrative form of cybercrime on the planet. Hackers would quietly infiltrate a corporate email network, monitor the CEO or the chief financial officer for months, learn their exact writing style, and wait for a massive transaction to happen. Right before the money was supposed to be moved, the hackers would send an email from the CEO's actual account, telling the finance department to change the routing number to a new account. The employee, seeing the email come from the legitimate boss, would blindly trust the signal of authority and wire millions of dollars into the void. But as companies started getting smarter, they implemented new security protocols. Two-factor authentication, verbal verification. The new rule was simple. If you get a suspicious email asking for a massive wire transfer, you have to call the boss and physically hear their voice to confirm it. The human voice became the ultimate unhackable firewall of trust. And then AI broke the firewall. In the early 2020s, artificial intelligence voice synthesis was clunky and robotic. It sounded like a GPS navigation system, but by 2026, the technology underwent an exponential leap. Neural networks became incredibly sophisticated at analyzing the micro-cadences, breathing patterns, and emotional inflections of human speech. To clone a voice perfectly, you didn't need hours of clean audio in a studio. You just needed 3 minutes of someone speaking, a public presentation, a YouTube interview, a podcast appearance, an earnings call. Criminals realized they no longer needed to forge documents like Victor Lustig. They could forge human identity itself. The new heist works like this. A criminal syndicate targets a massive multinational corporation. They scrape every piece of public audio of the CEO. They feed it into an advanced voice cloning model. They don't just clone the sound of the voice, they clone the emotion. They can generate the voice sounding calm, angry, or in a rush. Then, they use sophisticated spoofing software to make a phone call to a mid-level financial executive. The caller ID on the executive's phone explicitly says it's the CEO calling. When the executive answers, they hear their boss. The cadence is perfect. The slight accent is perfect. The impatience in the voice is perfectly replicated. The AI even generates background noise, like the sound of an airport terminal or a busy street, to justify why the CEO can't talk long and why the transaction needs to happen right this second. The executive isn't dealing with a Nigerian prince email. They are dealing with a psychological hack that bypasses every evolutionary defense mechanism in the human brain. For hundreds of thousands of years, the sound of a familiar voice meant absolute truth. Our brains are hardwired to trust it, and when that trust is manipulated, the money vanishes. The AI voice heist isn't just a technological trick. It is the total weaponization of human biology against the corporate financial system. Before we explore the devastating consequences of a world where voices can be forged, if you are fascinated by the hidden history of money, financial crises, and how technology reshapes the economy, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We explore the systems that run the world every single week. The implications of the AI voice heist are far more terrifying than just a few corporations losing millions of dollars. It strikes at the very foundation of how society operates. If we can no longer trust the voices of our leaders, our bosses, or even our family members, the entire concept of remote communication breaks down. Victor Lustig used a fake piece of paper to steal a fortune. Today's criminals are using fake reality to steal billions. The financial system relies entirely on the assumption that identity can be verified. When identity becomes synthetic, the global economy is forced to slow down, demanding extreme physical verification for everything. It forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. In a world where every digital signal can be perfectly counterfeited, how do we prove we are actually talking to another human being? We are entering an era where seeing and hearing adapt to this new reality won't just lose their money. They will lose the fundamental trust that keeps them alive.